If somebody doesn't send back the return at all, two things will happen. We will be obviously engaging in publicity at that point, warning people of the consequences and reminding them to send it back. What we will then do, and this is what I was discussing with Deputy O'Donnell, what we will then do is we will write to them and say, you haven't sent back the return. We will now be moving to enforce the revenue estimate. And that revenue estimate will be something you will have received in your letter in March or April. And we will move to enforce it using the full range of enforcement options available to us generally, which will include deduction at source from salary and all of the other enforcement options.
Which are?
Well, attachment orders are there.
Attachment orders.
Attachment of salary, attachment of bank accounts, and if necessary, we can go further than that. But those would be the two that we would see as being the most useful.
Can I just say to you?
Sorry, if I could just finish. In relation to categories, because you mentioned social welfare categories, in relation to categories of persons on social welfare pensions who haven't sent back a return, this is getting back to my discussion with Deputy O'Donnell, we will be writing to those and giving them a much longer time of reminder. But I have to say, and in the context of CNAG, we'll be looking at this next year, my target this year is to collect 250 million. And
that's, of
the
course,
legislation requires this to be paid by the 1st of July. And if people decline to engage, having gotten a personal... we listened a lot to the discussion around this. Yeah, but if people decline to engage, we have to move quite quickly in order to secure the tax, and as we do with any other tax.
No, I understand that. I'm simply trying to ascertain what faces the individual who, for whatever reason, is not in a position or chooses not to file a return. So you say that you will deduct at source. So presumably that means that there will be contact with the person concerned's employer.
Yes.
And the sum will be deducted as though it were a PAYE payment. Okay, I understand that. You've mentioned attachment orders, for instance, to bank accounts. Can you just explain to me how that happens? Revenue contacts the financial institution concerned, the AIB, the Bank of Ireland. You assess that somebody has a deposit account.
Well, we don't actually carry out an assessment. If we have bank account details, which we would often have because of engagement with other taxes or repayments and so on, we will simply serve a notice to the person and to their financial institution.
And you will deduct the money from...
And the financial institution will be asked to deduct that money and remit it to us.
And would that be just from a deposit account, or could that be deducted from somebody's current account?
It can be deducted from any...
From any account that an individual might hold. Tell me, what about people's welfare payments? So, and let's not get distracted by the deferral issue. You've mentioned that. Let's assume I am a social welfare recipient and I choose not to seek a deferral because let's not get even into my rationale for it. What happens to me then?
We will remind you...
no, you've reminded me
several times
okay, you reminded
of your
me...
entitlement to a deferral.
Okay, and I seek not to take that.
And of your right to displace the estimate by filing a return. And that's the legal position. You can displace the estimate any time by filing a return.
Okay.
So, and if you fail to engage at that point, then we will be contacting the Department of Social Welfare to deduct at source.
And you will ask. Now, so to deduct from a social welfare payment at source. Can I just ask you, Ms. Feehily, to just confirm for the committee that each of these actions, deduction at source, from payroll, attachment orders to your bank account, or direct deduction from your social welfare payment at source, are all of these entirely lawful?
Yes, they're all in the Local Property Tax Act 2012.
And I presume...
Or elsewhere in tax law that they've been imported.
Thank you. And presumably you have had some level of contact, I'm assuming, with the banks, with the Department of Social Protection, in respect of these compliance mechanisms?
We've certainly had detailed engagement with the Department of Social Protection because, remember, this is offered in the first instance as a service. This is a voluntary option that people can opt for in the form. They can opt to pay their local property tax by deduction at source. So we've set up a deduction at source arrangement with the Department of Social Protection, which primarily, my strong expectation, is that this will be used almost exclusively on a voluntary basis. If people want to spread the payments and they don't have salary, then their regular payment is their pension. If they want to pay deduction at source of their pension, it's entirely voluntary in the first instance. So we've had detailed engagement with the department and arrangements are in place. I have to say, I don't believe we've had engagement with banks because, quite frankly, this is a normal part of our toolkit, the use of attachment orders with financial institutions. We would use that a number of times a year in any event, so banks would be familiar with that.